Come on now, my name is Bryan Preston and this is my new show here on Town Hall Media. This show is not scripted. I'm not looking at a teleprompter. I didn't even write a script, so I don't know what I'm going to say from one second to the next. Could be fun, could be a tightrope, could be a high wire act, it could be a disaster. Hopefully you'll come along for the ride. I do have editors who will hopefully save me from legal liability or anything like that. Otherwise, I'm just here kind of talking, speaking my mind. What's on my mind today is COVID, double standards, triple standards, and that vaccine that is actually being shipped out to the country this week. First, let's talk some double standards. I saw a comment on Facebook earlier today that was on a post by my good friend Glenn Reynolds, the Instapundit, and the commenter wondered why it's all Democrats who keep violating their rules. This commenter was of course, thinking of Gavin Newsom, thinking of Gina Raimondo, thinking of Andrew Cuomo and his doofus brother Chris. How many Democrats have we seen violate their lockdowns? There was a big one here in Texas where Austin Mayor Steve Adler, this was hilarious. Right before Thanksgiving, he put a little video on social media telling folks, hey, don't go anywhere. Don't go visit family. Stay home, stay safe and all that.
And we need to, stay home if you can. Do everything you can to try to keep the numbers down.
One problem with that video is Adler was in Cabo in Mexico when he taped it and put it on social media. So this guy wasn't even staying in his home or in his neighborhood or in his city. He was in a different country. We've seen Democrats do this the entirety of the lockdowns. They have been violating their own orders. One of the worst ones was Gavin Newsom, who put California in lockdown. Then he went out to a restaurant that you couldn't afford unless you sold a kidney. And he was there not with family or people that he lives with from his own household. He was there with a bunch of lobbyists, people who, political people who are going to glad hand him and give him money and maybe save him from the recall effort that's now underway. So the commenter asked, why is it always Democrats that we see doing this? And I thought about it for a second. The answer is kind of obvious. It's only Democrats that are locking people in their homes. Whitmer, Newsom, Cuomo, all these governors, they're all Democrats. Even here in Texas, the lockdowns in North Texas, in Austin, Travis County, in Harris or Houston County, it's all Democrats that are doing that. The Republicans are actually the ones that are pushing against all the lockdowns, except Ohio, and saying don't do that because we need an economy to sustain ourselves and our lives and prevent evictions and starvation and suicides and all the horrible things that are happening. So the reason it's Democrats who are always violating the lockdowns is because it's Democrats who impose them. And then it's Democrats who think they should be living by a different standard than the one they impose on everyone else. If we had a fair media in this country, there would be a lot more stories about that, just about the fact that the Democrats just keep imposing standards on the rest of us that they don't live by themselves, that they have no intention of living by themselves. There should have been a week of stories about Adler, for instance, going off to Mexico. But other than the story we did here and the story that was on local radio, and there might have been one story in the local media, the mainstream media, that story popped up and went away just as quick as it could. Democrats in the media are on their side. So the bottom line on all that is that it's Democrats who keep violating their own rules because it's Democrats who keep imposing these rules. If you don't like these rules, the best thing you can do in your local area is kick out the Democrats. Seriously, kick them out. You look at Florida and Texas, we're not locking down anymore. You look at California and New York and New Jersey and all these other states that are Democrat run, Michigan, for instance, and they're acting like kings and queens over those states, and they're imposing all kinds of lockdowns. And even when judges tell them not to, as was the case in a county in Maryland this week, it didn't matter. They keep imposing the lockdowns anyway. So the bottom line is, the best thing you can do if you don't like these lockdowns, come on now, kick out the Democrats. They're the ones who are imposing these things, and they're the ones who go on violating these things. So another thing that's on my mind this week, related to COVID anyway, is the vaccine. We are seeing doses of the vaccine rolled out all across the country. 200,000 have already made their way to Texas. It's all very interesting because before the election, President Trump, in his role as national inspirer, if you will, said we were likely to have vaccines for COVID before the end of the year. Now, that's one thing presidents, we expect them to do, is to provide hope in times of crisis. And 2020 has been nothing but crises. If you go back to the very beginning of the year, just think about the things we have gone through. We started the year with rumors of World War III because Trump authorized the taking out of General Qasem Soleimani, who led Iran's terrorist efforts against us. All the experts out there predicted there would be World War III, and so we had that to worry about. Then there was that Ukraine phone call, and the Democrats impeached President Trump over something Joe Biden did that President Trump asked about. So that was another crisis we had. Anytime you have impeachment, you have more or less a political and constitutional crisis. As that crisis was abating, we had the pandemic start. And when you get the pandemic start, that's a crisis that we had not seen the likes of in 100 years. So we've been going through this crisis. We've been going through the economic impacts of it and the lockdowns and all that. And in the fall, President Trump came out trying to inspire the country and said, we're probably going to have a vaccine before the end of the year. The media immediately pounced on that, as they often do, and tried to demoralize the whole country. NBC led the way with headlines like this. So you see that NBC headline right there where they said they went to their experts again, probably the same experts that predicted World War III, and said Trump was going to need a miracle to get the vaccine done. Well, Operation Warp Speed has pulled through. It has paid off, and we have now 2, maybe 3 approved vaccines, and they're rolling out to the states. Do you see the media backtracking and saying, maybe we got this wrong? No, you don't see that. Somebody else who's not out there saying he got this wrong is Joe Biden himself. Before the election, Joe Biden gave interviews in which he said he trusted the science, but he thought it would be politicized, didn't trust Trump, so he was leery of taking a vaccine.
By the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all.
So that was before the election. Now here we are after the election, and Joe Biden is taking the vaccine.
Dr. Fauci recommends I get the vaccine sooner than later. I want to just make sure we do apply the numbers when we do it. But when I do it, you'll have notice, and we'll do it publicly.
Same one that Trump was working on. Same one that NBC said would need a miracle to finish. Biden's going to take it. What's changed between, say, September, when Biden said he didn't trust it, to now? I'll tell you one thing has changed, and that's the election. Biden was just politicizing the vaccine when it suited him, and now he's being political again when it suits him because we're past the election, and he has theoretically won. That is not leadership. Joe Biden, the fact is, has never been a leader. He's never been a leader in the Senate. He has never been a leader even when he was vice president. This is a guy who, according to Robert Gates, has gotten nearly every foreign policy question wrong in the last 40 years.
And you said in your memoir, Joe Biden is impossible not to like. Quote, he's a man of integrity, incapable of hiding what he really thinks, and one of those rare people you know you could turn to for help in a personal crisis. Still, I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I stand by that statement. I stand by that statement. I stand by that statement.
Do we think that's going to change at the age of 78 with Joe Biden? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a long 4 years with that guy in office. He is going to listen to the folks on the left who will basically treat him as a sock puppet as long as he's in office. He's going to attack our energy industry. He's going to attack our Second Amendment rights. He may even attack our First Amendment rights, as Gavin Newsom has in California and some other Democrats have with regard to our right to worship and go to church. We're in for an interesting time. We're in for a rough haul, I think, with Joe Biden. He politicized the vaccine for COVID at a time when we needed hope. He's going to politicize everything else. So the bottom line over these next 4 years is the media are not going to hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire. They're going to lionize him and make a hero out of him. And when Kamala Harris ascends to the presidency within these next couple of years, as pretty much everyone expects to happen, they're going to make it like she's the best thing ever in this country that's ever happened. They're not going to hold her accountable for anything. That's the bad news. The good news is we will, right here on this show and at PJ Media and Town Hall Media, we're going to hold these Democrats' feet to the fire. And when they come up with policies that are destructive, when they try and demoralize the country as Biden will, we're going to call them out on it. So if you see something you want us to talk about, shoot us an email and we'll probably talk about it. And as for all this crazy stuff that's going on out in the world, sometimes you just have to say, come on now. My name is Bryan Preston.